It's official. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Um, I think I recognize all of the faces, but just in case, my name is Natalie Millette. I'm the middle school principal. This morning, I'm also joined by Angela Brassington. Angela is the MYP coordinator. So she works with students from grade 5 all the way to grade 10 in the senior school, as well as the teachers. So as you know, this is our second MYP workshop, and our focus is on assessment and evaluation in the MYP. And we've timed this this workshop to align with the time in which your children have been completing assessments. And we think that this is about the time of year where parents start to have a lot of questions about how assessment is done in the MYP. So as you know, MIS is a full continuum IB school, meaning that students go from the PYP in junior school all the way to finishing the diploma when they graduate in grade 12. Each of those three programs has a specific way in which we are required to assess and evaluate. I've said required, but I'll be honest with you, having assessed students in a more traditional format before, which you were all assessed with as students once upon a time, and in the way that we do it in the MYP, I think that this is better. I think it gives students more specific feedback on the specific things that they are doing well and the specific things in which they can continue to improve, which is our goal. So our hope today is that you will have a better understanding of how we assess in the MYP. As you were coming in, there's a lot of things on your tables. This is a workshop and it's meant to be interactive. So as you were coming in this morning, I gave you one small slip of paper. And I told you that to write down, please, any burning questions that you have. What is the one thing that you probably are already wondering because you've worked with your students, some of you just for a few months and others for several years now in the MYP. So what's one thing that you absolutely want to have answered today about assessment? I'll come around in a few minutes and collect those and make sure that either Angela or myself answer them. The other thing you will see on your table, there's quite a few, there's another document, which is a chart where you can continue to write down your questions. So Angela has a lot of information to go through, and so we won't stop for questions throughout. But as we go through, we'll invite you to write down any of your questions so that we can address them in the end. Okay? And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Angela, and we'll get started. And I'll hand over the microphone.
Thank you very
Voila.
much. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Natalie. So my name's Angela Brassington and I'm the MYP coordinator, and I also teach this year grade 10 integrated humanities. Last year I taught grade 7 integrated humanities, and I've also taught design and I've taught English for many years. And I do also work for the IB as a school team leader, going to other schools to evaluate them so they can become IB schools, and I'm a consultant to other IB schools as well. So I'm not really meant to criticise the IB, but I'm not here to defend it either, but I am here to explain how assessment in the MYP works. Just to add on to what Natalie said, the IBO website, if you're new to the International Baccalaureate, is a really good place for parents to get additional information. If you scroll down, all the programs are there. They do actually have 4 programs. We offer 3 of them, hence we are an IB World school. The program we don't offer is an adaptation of the diploma program. It's called the career related program. We don't offer it because it's not recognised in Germany. Of course, we do offer the diploma program, and this is one of the best qualifications that students can have to enter university. In many countries, if students have completed the diploma program, I know this from my daughter's own personal experience, they get extra credit at university because what they've done in the diploma program is deemed to be more challenging than other educational programs. So just to point out the IB website to you, there's a lot of really good information there. So on your desk, yes, as Natalie said, you have lots of different things. There's this bingo. I just did that for fun, really. If you think I've covered something and you remember, you can just tick it off. But you can also use that piece of paper to write down any questions that you might have. And before I give the presentation on assessment in the middle years program, I'm going to really throw you in at the deep end and challenge you quite unfairly, I should add. I'm sorry about this, but it's to make a point. Now, you have to imagine that you are all teachers. You can work, like, please invite yourselves to work at Munich International School. It's a great place to work. The kids are really good. We have lovely parent engagement. So I recommend you be a teacher at MIS. But you have to mark this student's, it's a personal project. This is a project that the students do at the end of grade 10. It's a big 15-page report that they write. They take about 10 months to complete it. But you're just marking today one section of the personal project. You're marking criterion C, strand 1, and what the students had to do was evaluate their product against their own success criteria. And this student wrote a travel guide. So you should mark it. Who went to a school that had marks out of 100%? Put your hand up. Lots of people. So I recommend you mark it out of 100%. Who went to a school that had A, B, C, D, E, F? So that's how you should mark it. Who went to a school that had 1 through, in the German system, is it 7 or 6? 6. 1 through 6? Okay, off you go. You don't have to take this to literally just, it's to make a point. So I'm not going to give you very long. Just read it in a cursory way and give it what you think it would be worth. And then we'll move on. I'll give you maybe 1 or 2 minutes only. Are there any? Oh, okay.
How do we understand the levels? Okay. How do we make sure that our child is on track? What is high, medium, low?
Okay. Yeah. Good. So the first, I changed the presentation a little bit. The first bit is just a recap of ATLs because that's where we ended last time. And then formative, summative. And then I thought I'd move and show a bit of toddle. I'll just show my class and talk. Oh, I will use integrated humanities, but just to interject.
How do we see the marks so you can talk about the grade?
Okay, I can't show my grade book unfortunately because it's got marks in it. Yeah, yeah. So maybe just 1 more minute. You don't want to spend too long doing your marking. It's the worst part of your job. You need to do it quickly. You need to read really carefully and give it a mark. You have to use your professional judgment, teachers. Yes, it is. It's grade 10 work. Yeah, good question. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's grade 10. It's not grade 5, no. Yeah, yeah, I used the personal project because the criteria are pretty easy to understand. So I knew using a personal project maybe wasn't the best
So we should do one, like in my case,
Yep.
100.
Yep. So 30 more seconds. That's what we get to in a minute. That's the
okay.
MYP
So
score. Yeah,
okay,
so yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't write down your name. It's
Angela Brassington.
President.
Yeah, BRASS.
Just in case they want to write
Yeah,
to
you can, of course. Yeah, yeah. Yes, you can talk about it, what you gave, for just a second, and then I'll get your attention. Okay. All right. So who are the 100% people? Can you put your hands up? And can I have a volunteer from the 100%? What did you give it?
I gave it a 95.
95.
I gave 92.
92, okay. Anyone else? 95, okay. Okay, anyone else in the 100% markers? Okay, you're pretty generous, I think. Yeah. What about, yeah, that's nice. It's good that you're nice. What about the A through F? Any volunteers? Yes? A minus? Anyone else want to say what they gave it? You're all shy. Okay, what about in the German grading?
1 minus.
Okay, so that's also a good grade. Okay, a 2. Yeah, fine. Okay, and what were you marking it on? Like, how did you make that decision? Would anybody like to? Yes?
Well, first of all, I thought it was very clear.
Mm-hmm.
The objectives were set out and then they were met. I think there's a lot of good detail about how he or she thought about like usability, readability, weatherproof, connected to digital. They sought out feedback from other hikers. So it just seems like it was a very like planned out project.
Okay.
And that achieved its objective. So in my view, which is limited, of course, for the project, it seemed pretty well achieved.
Good. And when you went to school, were you given guidelines about what you had to include in a task like this, or did you just know that you were going to be marked on whatever scale that you were marked on? Yeah, sometimes different. And in this 100% or A through F marking, how does the student know how to improve?
He would have to be German.
Yeah.
The German system.
Mm.
No, because it's just a grade without any explanation. You can be lucky if the teacher explains to you verbally, but there is no description besides that.
Okay, yeah, so it's hard to know if you've got a grade of 3, what exactly you need to do to improve then. Okay. Yes, at the back, sorry, and then. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, good. And you wanted to add something?
I think in the German system, maybe it depends on which school. Son or daughter with it, but you also, from my daughter's side, I can say they did great, and also sometimes there were long explanations how to improve.
Okay. But it was just the teacher's written comments, yes. The students wouldn't have known beforehand what they needed to do to get the top grade.
Oh, yeah. Usually they write tests in an official test and unofficial test when they get already marks so that they know what to do.
Okay, like formative assessment.
Angela's really asking though is how do you know when you're looking at a piece of work differentiates a piece of work on which you get 85% and a piece of work on which you get 95%. Knowing that you might be marking this piece of work, but there's likely another teacher for another class in the exact same course that is also marking the work. And so one of the reasons why we don't use percentages, we don't use A through F, is because those numbers are a bit too arbitrary. For me, the best example was 95 and 92. Both are really, really good marks, but there's 3 points difference, right? And so we avoid those very specific percentages because in the end, they don't actually mean anything. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to have very specific descriptors of what work looks like when it is at a level of, whether it's 5, 6, 7, 8.
And we'll go into criterion-based assessment in a minute in more detail, but just because many of you were very generous with your marks, I thought it was worth pointing out to you one thing. But before that, just to say, this is actually something that teachers do. During early release and in our department meeting time, we sit down together and we bring samples of student work and we make sure that we are marking consistently. That what I think is a 7 is what my colleague, David Reel, would also give a 7 to. And sometimes it is really difficult to award a mark, and then it's also really good to have another teacher look at it. So this is something that we do. It's called internal standardization or moderation. Yes, we'll go into this in more detail, but just for you, while we're going through criterion-based assessment, to think, one thing that I really like about the MYP, it's these command terms. And I think when students understand the command terms, it really helps them improve their level of achievement. So the term evaluate means you have to talk about strengths of your product and limitations. So did that student have any limitations? Can anyone remember who read it carefully? They did? Okay. I thought I did this last year and I thought I'd set it up so they didn't have any limitations. They do, okay. So if they didn't have any limitations, then they wouldn't be evaluating. Again, we'll go into this in more detail, but I thought it was just worth pointing out the command terms.
That is an interesting document to look at to see the difference between evaluating at the different levels of proficiency.
Yeah.
So a student who receives a 3 or a 4, which is a mark that's a little bit weaker. We're not panicking yet, but we know that there's room for improvement. That student is actually not able to explain the strengths and the weaknesses of whatever they're being asked to explain. They're able to more describe something. And in order to achieve a 5, 6, 7, 8, which in the MYP is actually, you're doing well. You have those last 2 bands. You are evaluating level 7, 8. You're evaluating at a much more sophisticated level. You're really identifying what are the criteria that I need to use in order to evaluate something. So beyond saying this is really good, you might say the first criteria has to do with the fairness of the plan, and on that criteria, the plan is very good.
We ended the last session, the introduction to MYP, talking about approaches to learning skills or ATL skills. You might hear this term being used a lot. And I just wanted to remind you of what it means. These are skills that are really explicitly taught. The teachers plan backwards. So they think about, well, what are we assessing? And then they plan backwards to, well, what do the students need to know? What do we need to teach them? So I just wanted to remind you about the approaches to learning skills. There's a lot of them. I think there's 100 of them, maybe more. But the best way to understand them is to just look at there's communication skills, social skills, self-management, research and thinking. So for the personal project, the students are obviously taught a lot of research skills. So I just wanted to remind you about approaches to learning skills and to say that it's something that at MIS we're quite proud about our work around approaches to learning skills, because we do really identify what is it that kids are going to need to do on the summative assessment, and we make sure that we teach it and we make sure that we formatively assess the skill as well.
Angela, one of our burning questions had to do with readiness for future work.
Yeah.
And I would say that it is the approaches to learning skills that really address that. So you saw the different headings in the approaches to learning skills. These headings have been around for quite some time, but of course, when something new pops up, such as artificial intelligence, the use of AI, we do, at an age-appropriate level, support students in learning through information literacy, for example, how you make use of AI as an effective learner. We do it in an age-appropriate way. But we also look at organizational skills, collaboration skills, creative thinking, and that does not just mean thinking, artistically. It means actual creative problem solving, right? So you can be a creative thinker, or you have to be a creative thinker to be an engineer, to be a scientist, to be a mathematician, to be a linguist. And so these are all things that support future readiness.
And Natalie just said something that reminded me, and it probably is a good point to reiterate. The MYP is about concept-based learning. It's not, it doesn't avoid content. I mean, I said I'm teaching grade 10 integrated humanities, and my students are learning about the bombing of Hiroshima, and then they're going to learn about the Cold War. Obviously, there's quite a lot of content I need to deliver to them, but I'm trying to help them understand the overarching concept of power and global relations. So I don't have to, in an MYP school, because it's an international program, tell them everything about Australia's involvement in the First World War, the Second World War, and, well, they weren't really involved in the Cold War. I wouldn't teach the Cold War in Australia. But, when I taught in Australia, it was very much more content-based. But in an international environment, it's much better for the students to understand these bigger overarching concepts, and then they can pick sometimes some of the things that they're interested in learning. Some of the kids in my class, there's 2 girls and they're from India, and for this unit, they'll focus on power during the British Empire in India because they know a bit about it. It's a special topic of interest for them, whereas an American student might pick the Cold War, and that's what they'll write their essay on. So it's a much more conceptual program. Of course. Mm. The essay question is, for that unit, I'll just use that example because it makes the most sense, I think. The essay question at the end of this unit, where we've looked at empires, bombing of Hiroshima, the Cold War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then if we have time, the kids can look at a modern conflict today. And the essay question that they'll write would be, given countries' need to exert power, is conflict inevitable? So they have to talk about power linked to one of those topics. They can pick which topic they choose.
And often, so this is a grade 10 level, obviously
Yeah.
scale that down.
Yeah.
Graders will not be asked such a complicated question. But what they'll be asked to do is to use their knowledge, so their fact-based knowledge, in order to think about how conflicts might occur because of power structures, for example, in a simpler way.
Yeah.
How the fact-based knowledge be developed? Is that the study?
Yeah, and I think I show that in a minute when I show my class. Yeah, so I can go. I've only just started this unit, so I don't have a lot of resources, but I can show you more about how I taught the last unit. One thing I do want to emphasize is the importance of formative assessment. So this is assessment that happens much more informally prior to the summative assessment. And in grade 10, I talk a lot about grade 10 because that's the grade I'm working with, but this applies to every grade level. We want to really emphasize the importance of formative assessment, because in grade 10 we find some of the students, they're like, I'm not handing it in, it's just formative. I only care about the summative grade. But if they do that, they're missing out on the teacher's feedback. And with the level of work that they're doing in grade 10 that's being submitted to the IB, it's really, really challenging. If they get the teacher's feedback, doing the summative is so much easier for them. And the summative is at the end. It assesses what they've known, understood, and can do. And they do get feedback, but they don't do anything with that feedback. It's done. They're moving on to the next thing. So we really want to prioritise formative assessment a lot more. So do encourage your students to take the formative work seriously. So it is, just the teacher collecting evidence. It might be the teacher just observing, listening to conversations, sometimes collecting in a piece of work, looking at it. It can also be two students working together and reading one another's work and giving feedback. Something I like to do a lot that I think really helps students and relieves their anxiety so much, I show them an example of what I'm expecting. And if I don't have one, I use AI to create one for me.
There was one great question about
Yep.
these smaller groups that the homeroom teachers are creating in math and English right now in grade 5. You get math, it's called Math Mix Up, and in English it's called Literacy Lab. This would be an example of teachers having collected evidence from formative work in order to identify students who are ready for a higher challenge and some students who need reinforcement in some specific areas. And so it allows the teachers to create smaller groups that will really zone in on what is something that this student is really ready for at this time. And these are groups that will last for a short amount of time and then continuously be mixed based on the feedback that students are getting from the teachers and from the feedback that the teachers are getting from the students in terms of what they observe in class. So, Angela has talked about students in grade 10 sometimes saying, I'm not going to bother with formative. That does not happen in middle school. In middle school, in fact, it is the day-to-day work that you do in class with your peers and with your teacher that actually is the most important predictor of future success. If you wait until the test and you think that the test is where you're going to shine and that's where you're going to get everything right when it comes to anything else, that's not going to happen. And in fact, what we want to do in middle school is to reinforce this idea that it is your day-to-day work that is actually going to help you improve much, much more than the final test. So the final test, as Angela said, is the final mark, but it's all the work that led up to that that actually will support students continuously progressing.
And teachers use the formative assessment to inform their teaching. So another example, this to what extent question that my students are going to have to answer for the summative assessment. There's always a to what extent question on the on-screen exam that they're going to do for the IB at the end of grade 10. So I need them to understand how to answer that question well. And the command term, to what extent, means that you have to show both sides of an argument. So they're doing practice, formative, to what extent, writing tasks, just little tasks in class for half an hour, to get them used to writing under timed pressure, but also so that I can make sure that they are discussing both sides of an argument. So formative assessment also for informing and adjusting the teaching. Whereas summative assessment, it's about making a judgment based on the criteria. It informs the grade. I'll show you how the grades are created at the end. And the summative assessment grade is shown on the report card. So yeah, formative, really important, happens during class time, gives the students ongoing feedback, helps the teachers inform their teaching, and it gives the students opportunities to practice what they're going to be doing on the summative. Whereas summative assessment, it really is for the teacher to understand what students know, understand and can do. Part of my job is also dealing with academic malpractice, and when students have been reported and I have to talk to them, mostly because they've used ChatGPT to take a shortcut, one of the things I'm saying to them is the teacher knows what ChatGPT can do and they don't care. They care about you and they want to see what you can do. And handing in something from ChatGPT isn't helping the teacher support your ongoing learning. And the kids are usually pretty good when I explain that to them. And they rarely get caught a second time. Sometimes kids do. They need that second reminder. The important thing about summative assessments, again, this is probably something different from when you went to school. I know when I went to school, we just had a lot of on-paper tests. I don't think I ever did an oral where I made a recording of myself, for example, talking about Lady Macbeth's role in the play Macbeth, or I gave a presentation to the class. Whereas the MYP really wants teachers, demands of teachers actually, that's how the criteria are designed, to have a range of different summatives. And they do that particularly because of very heavy content and knowledge-based subjects like math and science. A lot of math teaching in the past was really just knowledge-based, and girls, the research shows that girls in particular found it difficult to connect to just the theory of math when it didn't have a real world context, when it wasn't connected to something that's relevant for them, that they can see how maths can be applied in a meaningful way to somebody's life. So that's why in the MYP, one of the maths criteria is maths in a real world context. And the students have to, investigate that, and the teachers will create tasks that show how maths really can make a huge difference to our lives. Look, if we didn't have maths, we wouldn't have ChatGPT, right? So the point of this slide is the kids should be doing a range of different summative assessments. And that's because the IB is actually a very right-on, equal opportunity, very big into fairness. I just went to one of their conferences and it was about, I think it was about love, or last year it was about fairness in education. And they do this, again, because some students are not good at writing. Some kids might be dyslexic, but they might be very powerful speakers. So it's to level the playing field to make sure that students have multiple different ways to show what they've understood. And so hopefully you get the sense that this criterion-based assessment is maybe a little bit better than what we had when we were at school. But authentic assessment is also something that's been thoroughly researched. And the more authentic, the more real world an assessment is, the more engaged the students are in it. Again, to use an example from my grade 10 class, the last unit that we did was on sustainability, and we looked at the Munich 2036 bid to have the Olympics. And the kids got really into it. They were taking selfies of themselves in front of the posters for the Olympic bid in Munich and bringing them into class and showing me. And, they were talking to their parents about it. So the more authentic an assessment is, the more engaged the students are. And that's what we try to aim for. So the difference between formative is assessment for your ongoing learning so you can improve. Summative is assessment of what you did learn. This is an IB presentation and they had that slide and I just couldn't delete it. I thought, yeah, that is quite good. Okay, let's look at criteria in more detail. At the moment, every subject has 4 different criteria, and the maximum level of achievement a student can attain is an 8. Um, this is changing, and I haven't even spoken to Natalie about this, but at the IB conference that I was at, they're updating the MYP. They do that probably every 15 years based on educational research. And they will change the criteria. Maybe some of you will be pleased to know this. There will only be 3 criteria for middle school students, and it will be more generic. They know that the criteria are difficult for kids to understand, but this won't happen until 2027. That's when it's first being released. Um, and they will stay with the subject specific criteria for grades 9 and 10 because they feel there are certain aspects of the subject that are important to keep. Yeah. So, hopefully this is a good thing. A lot of work has gone into making this change. But for now, we have 4 criteria. Maximum level is out of 8. Um, I find this slide quite good. I changed it. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, I'm sorry. But the main point is, in all subjects, criterion A is knowledge and understanding. It's good for the kids to know that. It's probably helpful for parents to know that as well. Criterion B is how you organise yourself for your learning. And in subjects like science and maths and design, it's about developing your ideas and planning. And again, back to the equity theme, this is really a good thing, I think, because, a lot of programs, a lot of educational systems that are so content knowledge based, it really biases kids with a strong memory because it's so much about, and this is still how the diploma program is, and the IB are desperate to change this. You just cram all this information in your head, and then you go into the test and you sort of regurgitate it out to the best of your ability. Now, some people are really good at that. I am actually really good at it. I had to do the Einbürgerungs test to get my German citizenship recently, and I surprised myself by scoring 33 out of 33. But I bet if I did it today, you need 17 points to pass. Hopefully I'd get 17. But a lot of the stuff, I've forgotten it already. So, the fact that these different skills are assessed, it's a really good thing because, now you don't have to have the best memory in the world. We've got the internet and chat GPT, but you do need to be able to do these things. And something like creativity is becoming really important, and that some research shows this will be a really determining factor in your workplace success, how creatively you can approach problems. And then criterion D is much more about, in English as an example, it says using language at the top there. It's spelling, punctuation, grammar, vocabulary, syntax, and so on. It's much more the nuts and bolts of the subject. So that's how the criteria are designed. Sorry, Natalie.
Sorry, just before you go forward. So I know that your children will come home and say, I got a whatever level is on my crit C in math. And you're sitting there thinking, what the heck is crit C? This is aimed to help you to understand that. The students adopt and the teachers adopt the language of the criteria, but this is what you need. And so as Angela pointed out, for each subject, they're slightly different. There are some patterns in terms of what the criteria tend to be across subjects, but they're very specific to the subject so that we can be pinpointing within, for example, language and literature, which is your mother tongue. So students who are studying language and literature in English are at a native level for English, or in German, same thing. They are graded on analyzing various types of texts, on organizing their ideas, again, but in whatever way they're communicating, producing texts, and finally, good old-fashioned writing, right? So grammar, spelling, all of those things. Whereas in language acquisition, you're learning the language. There, you're focusing more on Do you understand when you are listening to language? Are you able to understand when you're reading the language? Are you able to communicate orally, speaking in that language? And are you able to communicate writing? So it's much more specific to the language. And one of the things that I like about this is that it allows us to pinpoint one specific area, one specific skill within that language. Or sorry, within that subject.
Are you going to share the slide?
Yes, we can, can't we?
So all of this is being recorded, as you can see, and so it'll be in there, and you can also send your PDF of all the
Sure. Yeah.
slides.
I just have three. Yes, please.
So the criteria is that for the formative assessment or for the summative or for both?
Usually the teachers use them for the summative, but I mean, what the thing I do at the beginning of every unit I teach is say to the students, this is what your summative is going to be, and this is what you're being assessed on. And so teachers do use it with the criteria with the formative as well. I have, I think, 4 slides, and I'm going to go to toddle. And then what we're going to do, you'll mark the second student's personal project using criteria this time, just so you know where we're heading. So this is my class on toddle. And yeah, as I said, the last...
this is the teacher view of toddle. This is not what you're seeing.
So they had a 3-part summative assessment, but everything that they were doing in these learning experiences helped them to understand what they were going to have to do. And the students did have to produce their own infographic. Here's an example. And they did use the Olympia, yeah, or no Olympia. They kind of liked that slogan. But, you know, something that I had to teach them explicitly that links to ATL skills was how to create an infographic. I wouldn't be a very good teacher if I just said, yeah, go and create a yes or a no infographic about the Munich Olympics so I can understand your position without teaching them how you create an effective infographic. So we did go to the library, we had some books, and we had one lesson on creating an infographic. So going back to that unit that I was talking about, so the students have learned about empire. I can show you this. Something really good about toddle. I'm a big toddle advocate, and I also work for toddle. They don't pay me, but they invite me to talk in online meetings that they have, or there was a leadership conference in Stuttgart, and they ask me to talk about a school's experience with toddle. The thing I really like about toddle as a teacher compared to what we were using before, which was OneNote, for me, OneNote was so one-dimensional and for the workplace, whereas this is really, it facilitates the teacher to be able to be much more engaging and to create a whole range of different resources. So my students here, was where I introduced them to the idea of this unit being about power. They learned about, you know, the northern and southern hemisphere divide. They learned about which countries had had an empire. And then we watched this Jeremy Paxman BBC documentary. We didn't watch all of it, but I left it in there, and that was their homework then to continue to watch it. You know, we reviewed some vocabulary, and then we looked at the motives that different countries had for having an empire. And this is really the content part. And this is what I really wanted them to memorize, because if they can memorize that framework about ideological, religious, political, economic reasons for having an empire, then no matter what question they get on the exam, they'll be able to bring that structure and apply it to any of these topics. So that's how toddle looks for the students. And another example, something they have to do in history and integrated humanities, is an OPVL, origin, purpose, value and limitation of a source. And so they're just doing practices. These are just little formatives that they do either for homework or in class. so that they're prepared for when they do their on-screen exam. And remember I said the summative assessment that they do, it will be about, oops, sorry, shouldn't have clicked there. The question is, to what extent is conflict inevitable when nations exert power, or can power be managed to create peaceful solutions? And then you can see here they're doing a practice formative assessment on Hiroshima, but with the to what extent.
Maybe I'll just jump in here because I know this is a question, and I'll just say this and then we'll move back to assessment, which is the focus. This is what your child's version of toddler looks like. It is intentionally different from what your version of toddler looks like. I equate this to the binders, Hex, I think in German, that we all used to keep all of our loose leaves in, and then we would bring home to do our homework. This is your child's binder. We do not want parents to be able to open the workbook that the students are working in, because we want that to be under the control of your children. What we do want is we want you to know the big picture of what they're learning, of the emphasis of the unit, when the upcoming assessments are, and when you want to know what are the key vocabulary words that you need to learn in your unit on empires. We actually want your kids to sit with you and show you. Because in the end, no offense, but we don't care if you know the vocabulary. We want you to be able to engage in that with your kids, so that your kids can say, oh, today I learned about, what religious power means. And today, I also learned about Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere. And so that conversation is going on. It's not easy because we also know that middle schoolers don't necessarily always want to do what their parents want them to do, but that really is our goal. And when you're having a challenge where your kid's really refusing to share anything with you, the teacher is more than happy to share with you some of the handouts that are being provided in class. You just need to let the teacher know that there's a bit of conflict within the household about what they show you in there. But if you want to see that, sit with your child on their iPad and we will show this to you. Okay?
Another nice feature of Toddle is this portfolio. I can't show you because I've posted the last summative assessment, and I didn't check whether the grade shows or not. But when the kids did the summative, I post it to the portfolio and I write a comment celebrating, how they've done, because they did do really well. They took it really seriously and they really enjoyed it. So that's a nice way of celebrating their achievements, this portfolio. And again, I can't show you because I have graded some of my students' work, but the grade book is always visible. And I believe you have access to the grade book, which is a huge improvement from ISAMS last year, that you can constantly see how the students are performing. And when we do the next part, I hope you have a better understanding of what those numbers mean. Good. So moving on. You might want to have this sheet of paper in front of you now, the criteria, the personal project criteria with the command terms, because that's what I'm referring to. So sorry, I'm just thinking. Some criteria have several different strands. The version that I'm showing you here only has one strand, and the strand is C, it's actually C2, evaluate the product based on your success criteria. And you can see that this goes on a scale from 0, the student doesn't achieve the standard described. I mean, basically the student has to not hand the work in to get a 0, but we try very hard to avoid that happening. And on total, we mark students as absent, for example, if they weren't able to do the work. The 1-2, the student then states whether the product was achieved, partially supported with evidence for the 3-4. For the 5-6, they evaluate the product with partially supported evidence or examples. And then the difference for the 7-8 is that they evaluate the product fully supported with detailed evidence and examples. And just to refer to the criteria again, when, yeah. And would this, what you described before, is that what you use for grade 10? Or would that also apply for grade 5? Would they be able to? They probably don't have evaluate, they probably have describe or explain. The criteria for every subject, there's criteria for grade 5 and 6, there's criteria for 7, 8, and 9 and 10. This is 10, yeah, so evaluate, explain, to what extent, they're the more sophisticated command terms. So in grade 6, the students probably have describe, outline. 7 and 8, they're working more towards explaining. But here's an example of why the command terms are really important, not related to the personal project. And it's a ridiculous example, but I think it makes sense. Kids seem to go, aha, when I do this. If you were asked to explain what Angela Brassington was wearing today, and you said clothes, what level of achievement would you get? You've stated something. Yeah, a 1 or a 2. You can't get more than that. It's a statement, clothes. If you said a skirt and a vest and a scarf, what would you get? What would you give the student? 3, 4, because it's an outline, isn't it? If you said she's wearing a purple skirt and a hand knitted vest and a silk purple scarf and some boots, and black boots, yeah, what would you get? 5, 6, because it's a description. There's more detail there. But why isn't the student getting a 7, 8 with that information? What are they missing? They've been asked to explain what Miss Brassington's wearing. What haven't they given when they said a purple, so on? Yeah, they would need to say she's giving a presentation to MIS parents and she wanted to look nice, so she got one of her good skirts out and she thought the silk scarf elevated the outfit. That's a reason or a cause for what she's wearing. And then you can give the 7, 8. But if it's just a description, it stays at the 5, 6. Okay, so that helps you with understanding the evaluate criteria, which is you have to weigh up the strengths and the limitations. So hopefully you're good with that criteria that you have. As a teacher, you always work from the bottom up, but when you look at that second personal project that I'm asking you to mark here, I mean, you can see that it's quite long. You know, as a teacher, you would glance over it and you're not going to start at the 1, 2, I don't think, for this one. You're going to think, well, is it 5, 6 or is it 7, 8? I mean, it could be a whole load of nonsense and it might be a 3, 4. But, you know, that's the principle is you work for the from the bottom up until the work is the evidence and you're looking to find the descriptor that best suits the work. So the student, again, has been asked to evaluate their personal project product against their own success criteria. The command terms evaluate, they have to talk about the strengths and the limitations of the product. Natalie wanted to add something.
So probably the most popular burning question had to do with how do we know if our child is doing well when they come back with a mark. So looking at this rubric here, this is specifically for the personal project. What do you, and however, they all kind of follow the same pattern. What would be a range for a student who is doing well? So not great, not outstanding, but well. A 5, I would say a 5. So there's always two numbers in every band, and the teacher can decide between the two. Generally speaking, as a teacher, the balance is between a 4, which is one band above or below, and a 5. Students who are achieving a 4 and a 5 can demonstrate good understanding or analysis or whatever the criteria is asking them to do. At a 5, we're basically saying they get it, but they're not going deep enough to show that they're really extending themselves. Anytime a student gets a 6, 7, or 8, especially for students who are younger and are still learning how to show everything that is up here, we celebrate that. Okay? A 5, good job, well done. However, let's take a look at what your teacher has said about what you can do to achieve a 6 next time, because we know you're able to do it. Okay? A 4, you understand. So I'll take math for example. You know how to add fractions. You can do that regularly. However, you tend to make mistakes when the teacher adds a slight area of complication in adding fractions. Okay, so there's just one little thing, and so you make too many mistakes when that complication is there. But it's really no cause for worry if your child is bringing home an occasional 4. It means that you need to have that conversation with, what's that one thing where you're making too many mistakes? Is it because you're forgetting to put a capital at the start of your sentence in a criterion D for language, for example? Okay? Where we start to get worried is with the students who are generally, so one assessment, everybody has done it once in a while. But if over the course of several assessments, the students are staying within the 1, 2, 3, we're worried. We're bringing in middle school our learning support teacher, our EAL teacher for students who are still learning the language, to identify what's going on here. And we're speaking with the teacher about what are they seeing in class that is not allowing the student to elevate themselves to that safe zone of learning. And you're often getting emails about that. It may very well be that the student has been absent for a long period of time and catching up. It might be that they've decided that the work is not, they're not really investing and putting all their effort in it. So we need to figure out the why, and then we need to help them to improve. Okay? Part of middle school is also figuring out how to do it, a student. So how to show what you know on the day that we ask you to show it. And not every kid is going to do that well from day 1. Some students, they've got it figured out from grade 1. If your child was always on top of it, you can expect that to continue. But in middle school, sometimes we've got kids who are figuring out how to be students, which is normal. So for us, a 5 is good, really good. We're happy.
I've only asked you to assess this personal project on one criterion strand, but it is worth pointing out sometimes students are assessed on more than one criterion strand on an assessment, and it is possible that maybe they do just outline the impact of the personal project on themselves and their learning, so they get the 3, 4 for that criterion strand, but maybe they do evaluate really outstandingly and get the 7, 8. And when that does happen, and when that happens, the teachers use something that's called best fit, and that is where you would then average it. A better example is maybe if a student got outline, the 3, 4, but for the evaluate, they got the 5, 6, and then you would have to give them a 5. It would be wrong to give them a 4 then. So it's just worth explaining that. But for now, I've asked you, and I'm not going to give you very long, it's just a chance to have a break from me talking. But the idea is you use the criteria, you mark the work, and then I will show you the next part, the final part of the presentation is showing you how we get from levels of achievement, which is what you're marking on now, to a grade on the report card. So just a couple of minutes to mark that personal project using criteria.
So is this a 6? Is that what you're saying?
It's evaluating. It definitely has strengths and limitations.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas I think I actually had ChatGPT write them for me. And I said, I want one with only strengths.
Right.
So the first one that you had, I think it did only have strengths. Yeah. So it can't be given. No, I've just cheated. A kid really did do a guidebook, but I didn't want to use they did a really nice job and they got a really good grade, but I didn't want to use their work. For the point of that activity, it was better to have something that wasn't evaluating and something that was.
So this would be more of a 5, 6, right? Because it doesn't go into the limitations.
Probably, if you gave it a 5,
And then this would be
that's a
more
7, 8,
complete.
yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
Very clear.
Yeah, good, yeah, yeah,
Now it brings it to
yeah,
right?
yeah. Is everyone okay with what you have to do? Yeah, and you don't have to take it too seriously. I forgot to say the benefit of being a teacher is you get good holidays, but you've probably all taken a serious reduction in salary. Okay, good. Yeah. A student really did do that project. It's not students' real work, but a kid did do it, yeah. Is everyone okay? You know what to do? Yeah.
I'm loving this, by the way.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Were you? Oh, yeah.
The clothes was perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
totally new to IB,
Yes.
so I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, good,
Thank you.
good. I'm glad. Are you okay with the how criterion? Good, good, good. Very nice. Yeah.
So one job for us between now and Friday is if we can, the parents, some of them are saying they used to have there's a booklet of all of the rubrics for the different subjects. I think what I might do in middle school is to do the rubrics in the different subjects for the grade 5 through 8. Just
They're
so
on Toddle, so I've got them. I can give them to you.
perfect.
Yeah.
And then I can just put that in my bulletin as here it is.
And if you want to remind me, because I probably forget, I can show them where it is on Toddle. But yeah. Because it took me ages to go through the Program Resource Centre and pull out all the criteria. Okay, shall we get to the next part? Who would like to suggest what they've given student 2? Did they evaluate? Were they talking about strengths and limitations? Yeah, very clearly, weren't they? So you have to give them the 5, 6 band, but did they do it with really good examples and lots of detail? Okay, so that would be the difference between the 5, 6 and the 7, 8. And a student really did do this project and they did do a good job, but I didn't want to use their work, so I actually cheated and asked ChatGPT to write these examples for me. But yeah. Sorry. Yeah, and there are all these subtleties as well. The IB producer, it's called a subject report about the personal project, and in there it says for this criterion strand that the students have to use quantitative and qualitative data to inform their decision making. Yeah, it doesn't say that in the criteria, but we make sure in grade 10 we're reading all these reports so we understand. And several of our teachers are examiners for the IB. I'm not anymore. I used to be a senior examiner for the interdisciplinary exam because that is a fantastic way of learning. That's what the IB want, and you come back to your school and that's exactly what you do. Good. So it's June and this example is from an English teacher now. But you've done several different summative assessments across the year. You've done some creative writing, an analytical essay. The students have done an oral presentation and they've done a research project. And for criterion A, you have all these levels of achievement. Just to emphasize this, teachers and kids do call these numbers grades, but in purist MYP land, they're levels of achievement, and you'll see the difference between a grade now. So it is good if you call them levels of achievement. Again, that's something that can reduce the pressure that students unfortunately feel about assessment sometimes. These are not grades, they're levels of achievement. Oh, I thought I deleted all of those. I did on the next slide. So at the beginning of the year, the student achieved a level of 5, and then they got a 6. And for the last 2 assessments, they've been given an achievement level of 7, 8. And now you do not average as a teacher, because the theory behind this is, you know, the student's shown continuous improvement. And if you average that, you'd have them working at the 5, 6 band. But for the last 2 summative assessments, they've worked at the top band. That's where they are now. And all the teachers know this, and the students should know it too. So what's the only most appropriate level that a teacher can give for criterion A in June? They have to, yeah, I would give a 7. I would think it's better than giving an 8. You know, the 8, there's only one piece of evidence there. But for the last 2, the student's been working at that top band. I mean, if somebody gave a 6, okay, maybe, and they've got some reasons for it, but, you know, generally speaking, it has to be a 7. And what about this one? Yeah, or a 7. I mean, a 7 wouldn't be wrong because of that 1 at the beginning of the year. But that's where formative assessment also comes in. Like maybe that student had something going on. Maybe they were sick for that assessment. And hopefully it just kind of cancels itself out. So we'll give them a 7 here. But an 8 wouldn't be wrong. No other option than 6. And the reason I've put that there with only 2 levels of achievement is sometimes that happens. And that's an important aspect of MYP assessment as well, that you should never be including a criterion strand that the kids aren't doing.
But does this mean that only the grades at the end of the year are important? Because it seems to be.
Don't tell the kids that. Yeah.
So obviously, what Angela's showing you here are all of the summative grades. But as a teacher who works with students for 38 weeks, that's how long our school year is, 38 weeks, 5 days a week, you get to know the students. We know that, for example, I mean, Angela put the 1 as the very first assessment, but what happens if my very best student in the class here scored a 1 on the research project at the end of the year? And I happen to know that that day she was sick. That day she came to school really upset because she had a fight with her very best friend. Or that the topic was one that was really, really challenging for her, but throughout the rest of the year she did really well. This is where teachers also have to use the totality of the work that students are doing in class. So on the report card, as they're putting in the most appropriate level, the teachers will go back to the rubrics that you've been seeing and they'll ask themselves, what am I seeing day to day here? Is this student, for example, when there's a formative and they're less nervous, do they perform really, really well? And then on the day of the summative, because they're just a pack of nerds, they don't tend to do as well. So that's where teachers' professional judgment comes in. However, the first piece of information that teachers will use are the summatives. So we'll look at the totality totality of the work. We'll use this concept of most consistent level of achievement. So we're looking for consistency. We're also looking for most recent growth. So if you finally figured out how to write a full paragraph that is well organized in May, which is what we're hoping for, then we're going to give you credit for the most recent level of achievement with a bit more importance than what you were able to do at the beginning of the year when you weren't able to put two sentences together. And that shows growth. And then for the students where, let's pretend that I was going to give my student in criteria B a 4. When I look at their full level of grades, different grades in here. But if the 4 just doesn't sit well with me because I know, having seen this student, that in fact, she's more at the 5, 6 level, then I as a teacher will give them the 5 or 6 level because I know that my student is able to do better. We don't tend to do it in the opposite direction because then we'll rely on what a student is able to do some other things. But every once in a while, we will bump up that final mark on the report card. So what you'll be seeing, as I was talking about June, but you'll be seeing this also in January, right? So in January, you'll receive a report card with the 4 levels, the 4 criteria, the criteria A, B, C, D, which is based on all of the work that the students have been doing so far this year. And then in the second half of the year, we'll continue looking at the totality of grades in the whole year, looking at the second half of the year in terms of how it's improved.
So with the example like 8871, you would still give them a 7?
I might say, well, you know what? Maybe it's a 6,
Okay.
actually, because that 1 is important, but I certainly wouldn't give them a 2.
No,
right?
yeah,
And
that's
I
the
would
point.
also look at what their formative work informs.
Yeah. It's much harder to generate a grade in January because you'll only have sometimes 2. I don't like the January report card, and the IB don't require schools to issue a grade at all. They give the option for schools to do this, but they don't require it. What they do require is that you report students' levels of achievement. So it'd be good if the parents would get together and lobby the school to not have a January grade, because that's the reason. Yeah. Okay. So then, of course, these most appropriate or most consistent is another word that's used. Numbers are added up, and we have 24 here. And these are the grade boundaries. So as I said much earlier, there's 4 criteria with a maximum level being 8. So the highest points a student could achieve would be 32. But this student has 24, and that is the 6 grade boundary, so they get a 6. And that's the number that you see on the report card using the grade boundaries. There's a couple of subjects, personal project and interdisciplinary, that only have 3 criteria, and then the maximum level's 24, but it's not worth showing that for now. And my last point is, we were talking about this a bit earlier, and again, referring back to grade 10, where the students do these external assessments, exams and coursework that's submitted to the IB, anything less than a 3 is considered a failing grade. And when you read the descriptor for a 3 or a 4, both on the criteria and on this final 1 to 7 grade descriptor, it says here for a 3, it's work of an acceptable quality. This is passing. A lot of kids freak out when they get a 3. Oh my God, my parents are going to be so angry at me. But please, of course we want kids to have better grades than a 3. But a 4 and a 5 mean the student's doing very, very well. And especially at the beginning of the year, because something we didn't say is these criteria are written for what students should be doing at the end of the academic year.
So just to point something out, this is the final overall grade. So based on those 4 levels of achievement in the criteria A, B, C, D, then we get this overall grade. Make it complicated because everybody doesn't like to make our job easy. You'll notice that the final grade maximum is a 7.
Yeah.
And then in the MYP, the level of achievement, the maximum is an 8 level of achievement. So when you're seeing each of the levels for the criteria, think 8 is the maximum. When you're seeing the overall grade, which is we're taking all 4 of those criteria and we're determining final grade, the maximum it can be is a 7. And the most important thing, do you want to go to the descriptor for the grades?
That one?
This is uniform for every subject. So if there's one thing you want to reference in terms of how is my child doing holistically, have a look at this. Okay, Angela is absolutely right in pointing out that a student who is producing a 3, which I'll agree, I mean, I would be disappointed in myself if I came home with a 3. I'd be disappointed in my child if they came home with a 3. But when I read this, a 3 is work of an acceptable quality. And I'll tell you something about Natalie Millette, the student. Natalie Millette, the student, would have had to work really, really hard to bring home a 3 in math. Natalie Millette, the student, could have brought home a 6 in history, in English, in French, in art, without batting an eye. Students were complex in that way, right? So that's where, again, you have to know who is your child. And that's where we want to also say, you know what, I know that you are working your hardest right now and you produce a 3 or a 4 in math. We need to figure out what are the things that you might not quite be ready for next year so that you can work on that. But generally speaking, if you come home with a 3 at the end of the year in math, it means you're ready for grade 6 math or 7 math, grade 8 math. It means that the teacher needs to know that your readiness is a little bit shakier. And it means that the parent and the student knows that that student who is bringing home a 3 at the end of grade 5, by the way, in grade 5, the kids are pretty rare. They bring home a 3, but we're going with this example. It means that these are the kids who are working on those the online math that is tailored to their level of achievement right now. Sparks Math identifies where is the child right now, and the work, the exercises that they're doing is meant to not help them go from here to there, but help them go from here to here, which is what makes sense for them.
I want to do one more thing and then I know there's 2 questions. Now I forgot one of them. No, it's okay. Oh, that's so annoying. I should have written it down. Okay. So I take the questions and then maybe I remember my first point. You had a question?
Yeah, so what I've been able to ascertain so far is that it seems that there's one criterion per summative. Is that the case? Is that correct first? And is that the case moving forward, or does that change?
No, it changes. That's about the teachers getting together and planning and designing really deliberately, because you don't want to assess students on something that you haven't taught formatively, where they haven't got feedback, and that's not actually part of the assessment. And a concrete example, in criterion D in English, one of the criteria is non-verbal communication. So if I set my kids an essay and assess that criteria, that would be ridiculous because they're not doing it. They would have to be doing something like I'm doing now, using my hands, making eye contact, etc. They have to be doing a presentation to do that. So it depends. Sometimes it's really good to just focus on one criterion strand or one criteria for that power essay that my students are doing. They're being assessed on criterion A, their knowledge of the topic that they choose, how effectively they communicate their perspectives, and criterion D is having 2 perspectives. So they'll be assessed on 3 different criteria.
Very often 2, even 3 criteria can be assessed at the same time.
I remembered my one point. Teachers and schools are put under pressure to inflate grades. This is a huge problem, political problem in the UK, for example, where they rank schools and so on and so forth. But I always say to the teachers and to the students, the teacher is doing you no favour by inflating your grade, because then you have an unrealistic expectation of where you're working at, And if they give you a 7 when really you're a 5, you're like, I'm done. Don't need, I've got this. When, you know, really they haven't. So we do encourage teachers to, you know, it's evidence-based assessment, and they meet together, as I said, to check that they're being equal. And you had a point, sorry, and then.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Has this been explained to students? We're new to the school,
Right.
completely new to IB, and I have a ninth grader,
Okay.
which I'm worried about. Because has this been explained to the kids, to the students, or do they have like the criterion, the different levels that they're graded on or not?
Yes and no. There's the answer to that question. So in some grade levels, we do presentations like this, and the teachers will also present it. I haven't done this presentation with grade 9 new students, but I'd be more than happy to. And if you want to, I'm actually going to write it down here. But feel free to message me and remind me if you want to, because they have to know this. Yeah. There's one more question, and then I've got one more thing to, and then I'll take more general questions.
Just for my understanding how to really read the MYP criteria in the grade book on Toddle.
Yeah.
Because there it says grade, but isn't that actually a level of achievement?
It is a level of achievement, that's correct, yeah. Because, and that links to what Natalie said here, it is an inappropriate grading practice to, this student was assessed on all 4 criteria there, to apply the grade boundaries and say to that student, you got a grade of whatever for that summative assessment. The MYP don't want that. They don't want that pressure on grades. They want a student to say, look, you're doing really well with your, in English, that's analysing. This is organising, creativity, using language. The student needs to understand, they need to improve their organisation and their using language. It's broken down like that. The last thing I wanted to say is, how do we know that we're doing this well? Well, at the end of grade 10, we participate in e-assessment. Work is marked by the MYP. These are the numbers of students and schools that participate in e-assessment, and the world average out of a possible 56 was 37.71, whereas at MIS the average was 41.91. So we use this kind of data to determine, you know, are we exceeding the global average? And yeah, we clearly are. And I don't usually show that to parents, but you can see there are very few failures there. And in some subjects, there are many 7s that are awarded. And over time, just this visual to show you, this is the world average. Of course, in 2020, there was no exam, but students did still, they got results based on internal assessment. And you can see how far above the world average the MIS students at the end of grade 10 are. But of course, the whole of the MYP builds towards that.
Is that COVID?
Yeah, because of COVID, yeah. So, any questions that people have, I'm happy to answer now.
So, and 2 questions.
Yeah.
Do the students get, like in the examples that you gave, the criteria that they're being evaluated on are established? And when these are they separated, or when they're intertwined, are they also labeled for them to do it? And if so, do they also get this descriptor for them to know?
They do. On Toddle, so this is the formative that my students are doing. And as I said, I'm not assessing them on knowledge for the formative because they don't know enough yet. It's unfair to assess their knowledge. They're just learning about the topic. What I want to know formatively is, are they communicating and structuring their ideas so that they're doing the to what extent with the 2 perspectives, and criterion D is the 2 perspectives. So when they do that practice for me, I will, even though it's formative, indicate where they are as a level of achievement. It's not going in my grade book, but they can see where they are. So they all know ahead of time before they're being assessed, definitely, even though this is a formative, but for a summative, what they're being assessed on. It's part of the assessment.
As an add-on, is we take the the language of the rubric, the official language of the IB, and we create what's called task-specific rubric, meaning that for this specific task, for this test, this is what I'm looking for. So we're able to be even more detailed. So you'll see the general rubric, and then you'll also see, which is what Angela, I'm guessing, was showing, what the student sees. So it's much, much more specific.
I've got an example of that here with that infographic. Here's the criteria. Did you see? That's the Toddle AI assistant. This is all AI enabled. So you can say, and it's so cool and it saves teachers so much time that I can say, well, I need to teach the kids about an infographic. Can you give me some good resources to support them understanding the basics, and it'll give me suggestions. Where's the criteria? Here. And it's task specific here. You can see it's all about the Munich Olympics and about the points of a good infographic.
Parents, when your child comes home having received a mark on a test, the thing you want to look at is the rubric, the task-specific rubric. What most teachers will do is they will highlight on the rubric for the different parts of the assignment what level of achievement were students at. So very often in my class, a student might have part of their assessment that I'm evaluating, for example, at a level 4, something else that's at a level 6, something else that's at a level 3. And then holistically in my description, my explanation to the student, I'll explain why I gave them a 3 for this, why I gave them a 6 for this, and why I gave them a 5 for that, and why their overall mark for criterion D is a 5.
Yes.
All teachers doing it the
Yes.
same,
Yes.
because you love MYP, you love Toddle,
Yes.
but I guess there are some teachers who don't really
Yes.
So
You're right.
like these tools. So because I can see here, even if with my 5th grader, I have some subjects where I have a lot of content in Toddle, and then I look at some subjects where I think, okay, do they not grade? Do the teachers don't like the tool, or what's the matter? Why this is empty and this is full at the
So
stage?
every teacher uses the exact same approach for marking because this is the only approach that we use. Obviously, there are some differences in the level of detailed description, and that's where you as a parent should go back to the teacher to say, hey, Ms. Brosington, my child got a 3. I see why they got a 3, but could you help by adding more explanation so that my child understands why they got a 3?
Yeah.
So that's where a little bit of pressure on both ends, from the school and from the parents, helps the teacher to say, oh, I didn't quite.
So if Toddle is empty, I should ask the teacher why Toddle is empty?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to be fair to the teachers, this is the first year that we're using Toddle. And, you know, they had been using, I'm not a fan of OneNote, I thought it was horrible, but they put, and it was introduced during COVID so that people could do remote teaching. And the teachers did put a lot of effort, and it takes them so much time into creating those OneNote pages. And then they have to learn a new platform that is amazing, but it takes a bit of time to learn how to use it.
Policy that they should
Yes,
use it,
they
and
should
I
be
can
using it.
expect
Yeah.
that it's not
Yes.
empty. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you sit with your child, you'll probably see that their version of Toddle is.
Yes, that could be. You had a question.
Are the formative assessments always provided to the parent side of the Toddle or some other method?
You should be able to see them on the students. This is called the.
On the parent version of the Toddle?
No, I think it's only on the student side.
You would see what those assessments are. So you might see, for example, quiz on the rivers of Germany, for example, if that was a formative assessment. But you wouldn't actually see the assessment as a grade because very often they're not graded. That's where, if you want to know whether your child knows about all the rivers in Germany, you go onto the class flow, which is what they have access to, and you can see what they've completed there.
And you can see how I've organised my class flow in terms of those topics, but I could, and I have, put some things in the class drive, the past exams for the students. So there's several different parts. You can see that's called classroom, and there is the class flow. There's the portfolio that I can't show you because it's got assessment, but every kid has these posts, and the class drive. if you wanted to see what the teaching and learning activities that are happening in the classroom are, you would need to look at the student side. From your parents' side, you can see the levels of achievement, and I think there's other things that you see. Yeah.
So just as a warning, we're coming to the
Yeah.
last 2-3 minutes of our presentation, primarily because it's pouring rain outside, which means that this room is about to be used for indoor recess by our middle schoolers. So
Yeah, you don't
we
want to be
want
here.
gone by the time they
Yeah.
arrive.
Yeah.
So maybe a couple more questions, and
Yeah.
then Angela and I can linger outside.
Formative and massage meditation, but I don't understand coming from a classical tuning
Mhm.
training. Formative for me was always like a smaller percentage of my grade,
Uh-huh.
And then from here, it seems that it does not have anything. It actually it's just an influencer to your summative grading in the end that the
Yeah.
teachers say, you didn't execute so well here, but I saw your work throughout. But it's not that
I think that that's
division of
yeah.
90%
Yeah. That's a fair assessment. Yeah. Yeah.
So before the test, you get to take a practice test to see if you're ready for the test. And if the practice test, you do a whole section you couldn't answer, then you know, oh, wait a minute, I've got to go and study the test.
So thank you so much for coming along. I really like giving this a workshop. And if you have any feedback for me about how I can do it better, I'm really open to that. And here's my email address. I should have put it on there. It's A for Angela, Brassington at MIS. So if you've got any feedback about how I can improve the workshop, that would be good. And yeah, of course.
First of all, how do you make, or how do you find out if this was made by ChatGPT?
Oh,
And the
yeah.
second question is, how do you make sure that people using ChatGPT, since this is what
Good question. Yeah. I mean, I did use ChatGPT to make that because I'm an adult and I should have cited it. I didn't do that. You can report me to Natalie if you want to. The teachers are really good at detecting whether students have used AI because they know the student work and they know what ChatGPT produces. And ChatGPT, it doesn't produce work that really meets the criteria. So of course students do it. They use ChatGPT or other AI because they're disorganized. And when we talk to them, they say, yeah, I ran out of time. And we do a lot of work saying to them, well, when that happens again, like the worst thing you can do is cheat using ChatGPT. You would be better to come to us and please do and say, look, I've run out of time. I need another day. And then we will give them another day. We positively reward them for being honest if they have used AI, and B, admitting that the school is chaotic. The English teacher doesn't know how many science or maths tests, well, they should now with Toddle, but a lot of teachers are only thinking about their subject and they're not thinking holistically about what's going on for kids. But they are very good, and I could do a whole presentation on interesting ways that kids have cheated and teachers have caught them.
There's actually 2 reasons why students resort to other means. I hate to use the word cheating because number one, sometimes they run out of time for
Yeah.
skills. Number 2, they do not understand
Yeah.
what you taught them, and they haven't yet acquired the skill to go to their teacher and say, I don't get it. And
Yeah.
so this is where, as the middle school principal, kids need your help. We don't want you when they are in grade 10 and 11 to have to advocate constantly for your child. But if in grade 5, in grade 6, in grade 7, and even in grade 8, you are seeing that your child is not able to read a text and identify the key points in order to take notes, that's when you need to contact the teacher and say, hey, my kid is not able to do this. Because then what we have to do is stop and say, you're not going to write your essay yet because you actually don't know how to do the research. So please do that. Those are the 2 reasons that both Angela and I see the most often. Run out of time.
We do one other thing about AI though. we can use those checkers, but they're not, you couldn't in a court case rely on those, you know, chat GPT zero checkers. But the teachers, they just know. Um, but we do want students to be using AI. And an example of how a student could have used AI for that personal project task would be ask AI, can you recommend some ways that I can collect quantitative data to assess my product? That would be absolutely fine. A good use of AI. That's how we want them to be using it. We tell them that. We have done workshops on that with certainly senior school students, and they have to cite it. And the IB realised that can't stop students doing this. So their policy is you cite that you used AI and you have to include the search term that you used. Yeah.
In middle school, we guardrail the use of AI. We don't want them just using ChatGPT. So we actually, as teachers, will create assignments on Toddle in which they can use the Toddle AI.
Yeah.
So for example, in grade 8, students were writing a research question in my class for their research project, and they wrote the question using what I taught them, and then they used I was going to say ChatGPT, the AI feature of Toddle that had been programmed to say, how can I make this question better? Basically.
There's a Toddle AI tutor, and the teacher sets it up so that the students can engage with the AI. But of course, it's very limited. I mean, Toddle is GDPR compliant because they're using several large language models and they have filters as well. So this Toddle tutor is a really good way of students. If for languages, it's great. The kids can be speaking in German and the Toddle AI tutor will give them feedback about their pronunciation. Lots of good, really cool ways that the kids can be interacting with AI safely on Toddle.
But it's only for certain projects. It's not 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not like when I don't understand math. Oh, Toddle, can you tutor me 5 minutes how to do it?
Exactly.
No, the teachers have
so
to set it up.
On that note, because we're about to literally be inundated, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I hope it was helpful.
Yeah.
And don't hesitate to reach out to teachers and to us if you have any questions.